If I had to give the Movie Maverick award for the most pointless film I've seen for a while, I think Challengers by Luca Guadagnino would be one of the frontrunners for the prize. It's not that it's a bad movie as such, but I do come away from it wondering whether I'd have been better spending the time cutting my toenails or organising my sock drawer. It's surprising in a way. The film has a bit of a buzz around it and was originally supposed to have opened the 2023 Venice Film Festival until it was pulled because of the actors' strike. Having numbed my bum watching it, I can't help but think the strike did the festival a bit of a favour. So, Challengers tells the tale of childhood best friends Patrick Zweig, played by Josh O'Connor, and Art Donaldson, played by the somewhat Paul Daniels-looking Mike Feist, a British magician from the 80s Americans. Look him up. Essentially brothers, the friends are budding tennis pros, and on the circuit meet Tashi Duncan, a supremely talented future legend played by Hollywood starlet of the moment, the economically named Zendaya. Both fall quickly in love with Tashi D and start to compete with each other for her affection. When a sudden knee injury puts an end to Tashi's professional career, she has to find a new way of living and finding happiness, choosing one of Patrick or Art to spend her life with. But will Tashi cope without the sport that is her obsession, and will the boys' friendship survive the battle for her love? I don't mean to come across as mean here, but whenever I see Zendaya acting in a movie, and let's be honest, post-Dune that seems to be a more common thing, I get a sense of smugness coming from her. It's probably a little to do with the single name thing. I looked up a list of celebrities over the years who've gone by just one name. A bit of smugness seems to go with the territory. But I have to say, to my surprise, after what I'd judge as two pretty lacklustre performances in the desert movies, Zendaya's actually not bad in Challengers. You can tell she put in the work with the tennis coach to look the part, months with pro-turned-coach Brad Gilbert apparently. Her character is pretty dislikable and the centre around which almost all the movie pivots, but Zendaya handles it all well, playing a different version of her character, one young and seductive, the other older and manipulative, as the timeline jumps backwards and forwards. It's not an Oscar-worthy performance, but she looks grumpy when she needs to, playful when she needs to, and this at least is a step up from Dune. Josh O'Connor and Mike Feist do a reasonable job as the two love interests, Patrick and Art, but they just don't have enough to work with in this one to really make a splash. Apart from the odd moment when they're whacking a tennis racket on the court, like Shawn Michaels slamming a chair on Bret Hart's back, it's all a bit middle of the road, a bit flat. Apparently, Austin Butler and Timothée Chalamet were considered for roles in Challengers. I think they probably made the right call skipping it in the end. This flatness in the story is what makes the film dull, really, and it's a shame because the script itself is written well. There are little details in the story world, the characters and their actions that communicate a lot about them without them having to say anything. It's a tricky skill this, as we've seen in a lot of films I've reviewed on this channel, but writer Justin Koritskis does a good job. It's always nice as an audience to play an active part in watching a movie, to work things out, wonder why this happened or that happened. Challengers is full of such little moments. The movie is structured in a somewhat interesting way too, using the framing device of a tennis match, set 1, set 2, etc., to illustrate the trio's relationship over the years, jumping around in time. That both of these threads dovetail at the end of the film into a somewhat tense climax is nice work, and things don't necessarily wrap up the way you expect them to, which is always pleasant. But it's the overall story concept and plot that really lets Challengers down. Not that it doesn't make sense, just what's the point of it all? It says little about its love triangle other than the supremely obvious point that a friendship between two lads can be disturbed by the introduction of a girl they both like. There's some nice stuff with Zendaya's character, a strong female with the desire to be the best at whatever she does, but she's also a raging narcissist, so we as an audience are never going to root for her. Nor do we particularly root for either of the lads. They're pretty stupid in their interactions with Tashi, and by the end of it you just want to knock their heads together. There's a sprinkling of humour in Challengers that works for the most part, but it's no more than the dusting of parmesan on a pasta dish. The rest of the film is pretty bleak and negative, so if you've seen the adverts and are thinking it's more of an early 2000s rom-com, maybe dust off some of your old DVDs instead. The film looks reasonable, although I did find there to be a little too much tennis at times. I know that sounds a bit silly with it being a tennis film and all, but you'll get what I mean if you watch it. We expect a lot of fighting in Saving Private Ryan and wrestling in The Wrestler, as that's what those two films are about. But Challengers isn't really about tennis, rather relationships, and some of the sport scenes do go on a little long. You could say that about a few of the non-tennis scenes actually too, of which more than a few outstay their welcome. Some of these scripts in recent Hollywood movies could really do with an editor to tell the writers and directors when the work of the scene is done. I don't need to see characters sitting at tables twiddling their thumbs. Which is, ironically, what I found myself doing for a lot of Challenger's runtime. It's not a terrible film, like I said at the start, but I'd file it firmly under forgettable. I just don't care that much which of two middle-class Americans gets to go out with a narcissistic other middle-class American. But if that is your thing, then, well, you're in for a bit of a treat. Anyway, nothing more to say. This is Movie Maverick, signing out.